Hi, my name's Bryony. Today was supposed to be the proudest moment of my life, graduation day. I walked the stage, earned the diploma, but not a single person from my family showed up. Not one. While I sat alone in my car picking at cold fries, they were out celebrating my sister. Again. But that wasn't the worst part. The real pain was realizing this wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern, one that started long ago. Quiet, cruel, calculated. And when the principal knocked on my window, it wasn't just a surprise, it was a turning point. What do you do when the people who raised you pretend you don't exist? The moment they called my name, I heard the cheers, but none of them were for me. I stepped onto that stage with my cap slightly tilted, a safety pin holding my gown together beneath the collar. The lights from camera flashes blinked like impatient stars, but I didn't look toward them. I looked for faces, for someone, anyone, nothing. Rows of parents stood to clap, grandmothers threw kisses, siblings jumped, screamed. But my row? Empty. 4 seats reserved, neatly marked with a folded white card labeled Miller Family. Still untouched. I held the diploma tighter than necessary, fingers gripping the edges like they might fall away if I let go. I nodded at the principal, tried to smile for the photographer, then walked off stage like I was just another name on the list, which, apparently, I was. It was supposed to feel different, like the end of something hard-earned, or the start of something worthwhile. Instead, it felt like a polite exit from a party I was never really invited to. The gymnasium was buzzing. Balloons bounced against the ceiling. Someone's uncle popped open a bottle of sparkling cider and sprayed it like it was the Kentucky Derby. I slipped past them quietly and headed toward the side doors. Outside, I finally checked my phone. 3 missed calls, but not from family. A junk voicemail, a weather alert, then a text from an old classmate. "Hey, congrats, girl, you made it." Kind, but not what I was looking for. I scrolled through Instagram with that dumb hope you try to pretend isn't still flickering in the background. And there it was. A story posted just 20 minutes earlier. My mom, stepdad, Seraphine, and a few cousins seated at Alder and Ivy, one of those high-end places with cloth napkins folded like origami and menus where they don't list prices. Celebrating our Stargirl Seraphine's Community Award. Couldn't be more proud. #Pride of War family. They hadn't even replied to my invite. Not even a no. I felt something inside me unhook. Not rage, just clarity. Like realizing a stain on your favorite shirt isn't coming out, no matter how many times you wash it. They didn't forget. They chose not to come. I walked across the school parking lot, past the rows of families loading gifts into trunks, posing for last-minute photos. Someone's granddad called out, "Don't drop that diploma, champ!" A woman teared up while adjusting her daughter's tassel. And me? I just kept walking until I reached the far end of the lot where my car sat. Old, dented, reliable. I tossed my gown onto the passenger seat. The tassel flopped over like it was exhausted too. Then I slid into the driver's seat, pulled a greasy fast food bag from the floorboard, and unwrapped a burger I'd picked up earlier, just in case. Just in case this exact moment turned out how I feared it might. The gymnasium music still played faintly in the distance, Don't Stop Believin' of all songs. I chewed slowly, my jaw stiff. My diploma sat unopened on my lap, a little piece of paper that took 4 years of scraped-together courage, night shifts, early mornings and weekends buried in library books. But no one saw it. And when no one sees you succeed, when the people who should be there aren't, does it still count? I leaned back, letting the sun press through the windshield. Not warm, not cold, just there, like me. Maybe that's what it's always been, just me. I peeled the label off my drink cup like it had wronged me personally. Little pieces of paper stuck to my thumb. I stared at the stringy remains, wishing it were that easy to rip out the parts that hurt, peel away the disappointment, the shame, the misplaced loyalty. My phone buzzed again. Another photo. This one of Seraphine holding a trophy, some community leadership thing. Captioned, "She's always been the one to look up to. We're blessed." We, as if I didn't exist. I closed the app, turned the volume down, let the quiet sit beside me. Because the truth is, I had shown up. I walked that stage. I did the damn work. They just didn't. I sat with the paper cup crumpled in one hand, the condensation soaking into my palm, and silence humming like static inside the car. Not even the seagulls dared to fight over fries today. The air outside buzzed faintly with leftover celebration, the kind you feel more than hear. But inside, stillness. I popped another cold fry into my mouth, not for hunger, just something to do, something to chew on that wasn't disappointment. Then, without thinking, I unlocked my phone again. I wasn't expecting anything. It was more like a reflex, like scratching a bruise just to see if it still hurts. And it did. The family group chat, still pinned at the top, lit up. A new message from Uncle Travis, a photo of Seraphine in that green silk dress. The same one she dangled in front of me 3 months ago, casually mentioning it was for a professional gala. Of course, no one told me that gala was just code for her graduation party. In the photo, she stood in front of a gold balloon arch, holding a fake diploma and grinning like she'd just solved world peace. Everyone was around her. Mom, stepdad, Aunt Desiree with her forced smile, even my baby cousin Jonah still in his car seat, mouth open like he'd been told to clap. Then came the comment from cousin Jess. Wait, Bryony graduated today too? Thought she dropped out, LOL. Followed by 3 laugh reacts. Nobody corrected her. Nobody even tagged me. I didn't reply. I didn't scroll up. I didn't even breathe for a few seconds. I hit leave chat. No one noticed. I set the phone down in the passenger seat next to the diploma I hadn't opened yet. For a moment, I just stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Hair tied back in a messy knot. Mascara smudged under one eye. Lipstick mostly faded, except for the corners. You look tired, I whispered to myself. And then it hit me, not the insult, but the fact that no one else had said it, that no one cared enough to notice. No text, no check-in, nothing. They hadn't just missed the ceremony. They'd opted out of me. My thumb brushed over the edge of the tassel again, then hovered over the cracked screen of my phone. I should have cried. I should have screamed. I didn't. I just sat there, suspended in that feeling people talk about when they say the hurt's gone numb. And then, like memory dragging its heels behind me, something pulled me back to 6 weeks ago. It was a Saturday. I was folding laundry at the kitchen table while Mom poured over a recipe she said she'd never actually cook. I asked, casually, like I was afraid the request itself might offend her, if we could maybe pick out a graduation dress. Just one nice thing, something that would make me feel like this day mattered. She didn't even look up. Money's tight, hun. Let's keep it simple. Maybe check Ross. 2 days later, Seraphine posted a photo from Luxe Salon downtown, her hair pinned in perfect soft curls, captioned, "Getting glam for my big weekend." And there it was, the same green dress, designer, tailored, monogrammed hanger. I didn't say anything back then. I didn't have the words, and even if I had, I don't think they would have landed. Sometimes, silence feels safer than proof. Back in the car now, I leaned forward and rested my forehead against the steering wheel. When people stay absent long enough, I muttered, you start inventing reasons. Just to stop the bleeding. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they had something come up. Maybe they didn't want to pick sides. Maybe they didn't realize how much it would matter to me. I knew those were all lies. But lies are softer than silence. I looked up again, into the side mirror. It wasn't the face of a victim. Not today. It was a woman. Rumpled, tired, but still here. If no one sees me, I whispered, maybe I don't exist. That thought shook me. I sat upright, eyes wide open. I didn't say it again. I didn't dare say it again. Instead, I deleted the entire family chat. I didn't archive it. I didn't mute it. I erased it like a splinter that finally worked its way to the surface. Then I reached for the burger in my lap, cold, soggy, and opened the window. I didn't toss it out like I was angry. I dropped it because it didn't belong with me anymore. None of it did. I pulled my hoodie from the back seat, threw it over my shoulders, and tucked my legs up onto the seat. I locked the doors. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted to feel something wrap around me, something safe, something that didn't ask me to be grateful for scraps. I let my head fall back against the seat, staring at the ceiling of my old Civic like it might give me an answer. And just when I was about to finally close my eyes and let it all fade, my phone buzzed once. A message. Not from family. From someone I hadn't heard from in a long time. I stared at the screen like it might change if I blinked hard enough. The message sat there, soft and curious. "Hey, was that you in the video montage?" I typed back, "Yeah." Paused, then added, "Not that it made the final cut." No reply came immediately, and that was fine. I didn't need comfort. Not really. It was the acknowledgement that cracked something open. Someone had noticed me, even if by accident. That someone, not my mother, not Seraphine, had seen my face, even if just for a second in a room full of strangers. I set my phone back down in my lap. The screen went dark, and my reflection blinked back at me. Tired eyes, smudged liner, expression unreadable. A question crept in, quiet as a draft. How many times had I been cropped out without even knowing? It started years ago, of course, but the first time I noticed it was senior photo day. The morning had already gone sideways. I got a flat tire on the way to school, and instead of calling someone for help, because who would have answered, I fixed it myself in the parking lot of a gas station. Ruined my nails, ripped my hoodie, and still made it to school before first period ended. The class was already lined up on the bleachers. Everyone polished, posed, loud with energy. I tried to find my spot, but Mrs. Kellerman waved me to the end. "Just squeeze in over there," she said, like I was an afterthought, a leftover. I remember the flash going off as I barely sat down. I wasn't even looking at the camera. Weeks later, the final print hung in the main hallway. There they all were, row after row of smiling faces, arms draped around shoulders, futures wide open. I had to squint to find myself. Left edge, half a shoulder, a hint of hair, no face. I'd faded into the margin like I wasn't meant to be there in the first place. I remember asking if there'd be retakes. Mrs. Kellerman smiled politely and said, "No time. Everyone looked great. Everyone but me." The pattern kept going. Small things at first. My name misspelled in the school paper. Invitations left off RSVP lists. But then, last month, Aunt Enid had come to my school fair. She actually showed up, watched me present my tech prototype, asked real questions, even gave me a side hug like she meant it. The next morning, I woke up to a Facebook post from her. Picture of me in front of my display board, captioned, "So proud of this brilliant young woman." It got a few dozen likes, some heart emojis, even comments from people I hadn't talked to in years. And then, it was gone. Deleted overnight. I messaged her, "Hey, did something happen to the post?" She replied hours later. I was asked to take it down. It was causing friction. Causing friction? Me being acknowledged for doing something good was causing friction? That stuck with me. Still did. I tapped the rearview mirror lightly and tilted it up. My reflection disappeared. All that remained was the back window and the empty lot beyond it, just rows of cars, none of them mine, none of them waiting for me. I didn't move the mirror back. Let it stay like that. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd removed me, carefully, methodically, as if I were a smudge on a lens they couldn't quite wipe clean. Not just from the photo, from the narrative, from the version of family they wanted to present. I ran a hand down my face, pressing my fingertips to my temple. I wasn't about to cry. Not for them. Not again. But that didn't mean it didn't sting. Outside, the sunlight had shifted. It was the kind of golden hue that only shows up for a few minutes before the evening falls in. Like the world was holding its breath, waiting. I pushed open the car door. The hinges squeaked, too loud in the quiet. Grabbing my hoodie tighter around me, I stepped out and shut the door with a soft thunk. I stood there for a moment, letting the air settle on my skin. It smelled like fresh-cut grass, leftover popcorn from the gym, and something faintly sweet. Probably from the nearby food truck parked for families who'd actually had someone to cheer for today. I didn't head toward the parking lot exit. Instead, I walked toward the school building. Not through the front doors. Those were for families with flowers, with posters, with last names people recognized over the PA system. I knew better by now. The hallway through the side entrance still smelled like old paper and floor wax. Quiet, a little stale. I passed the vending machines that hadn't worked since winter and turned left toward the admin wing, my footsteps muffled against the linoleum. The place was mostly empty now, save for a janitor humming under his breath as he wiped down lockers. He gave me a nod, like I belonged. I didn't correct him. That hallway had once been familiar. During late study nights when I'd needed Wi-Fi and silence more than I needed a warm home. I knew which doors clicked shut too loudly, which tiles creaked, which bathroom light flickered nonstop. There was comfort in that routine. But tonight, something about walking those halls felt colder. Like the building had absorbed everything I'd given it and decided I didn't need a receipt. Near the main office, I spotted a small table lined with leftover programs from the ceremony, neatly stacked, untouched. I picked one up. The cover was glossy, printed with gold cursive, Class of Resilience 2024. I flipped to the honor roll section, eyes scanning for my name. It wasn't there. Instead, I found it lower on the page, under Special Mentions, misspelled, Bryony. Like a clerical error, like a joke no one would bother to fix. My chest tightened, not from shock, but from the exhausting predictability of it. Inside the admin office, the blinds were half closed. Through the gap, I spotted a yellow sticky note stuck to a manila folder on the desk. Scribbled in hurried ink, confirmed with parent, Bryony not walking valedictorian status. My jaw clenched. I had the GPA. I had the attendance. I even had the draft speech saved on a Google Doc that had never been opened. I knew the rules, and I knew the system. When people don't want you visible, they don't break rules. They bend them quietly until you're erased with a smile. I set the program down, folded it in half once, then again, then again. I placed it neatly back on the table, looking untouched. Let them have their version of the night. I had lived the truth of it. My steps carried me further down the hallway, past trophy cases filled with shiny names that had never sat beside mine. I stopped in front of the tech lab door. Lights off. Locked. I pressed my hand against the cool metal and closed my eyes. The senior video montage. That had been mine. Every sound transition, every frame cut, every background track. I had spent over 70 hours editing that thing. I had even pulled an all-nighter syncing captions to make it ADA compliant. But during the ceremony, as everyone clapped and smiled at the big screen, the principal's voice had rung out, "We'd like to thank Seraphine Fields for her contribution to the senior video." Seraphine, who had handed in the USB drive the morning of, barely remembering what was on it. I hadn't even known they'd credited her. I'd been backstage fixing a corrupted file up until 10 minutes before the show started. And when I'd heard it from behind the curtain, all I could do was breathe, slow and deep, because if I'd walked out then, I would have ruined the one thing I'd actually made. There's a kind of silence you learn to carry when you grow up being the extra, not invisible, just optional. I stood there a little longer, waiting for the sting to pass. It didn't. Turning away from the door, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the small trophy case by the wall. My face wasn't centered. It hovered just to the edge, a little warped by the curved glass. I didn't bother adjusting my angle. I didn't need to see myself to know I was there. Then I heard it. Footsteps, steady, approaching. Instinctively, I ducked back near the stairwell, hidden by the corner. Old habit. When you've spent your life being asked to step aside, you start doing it without being told. The office door opened. I peeked out just enough to catch a glimpse of Miss Winslow from admin, locking up. She tucked her keys into her purse, adjusted her cardigan, and walked off without noticing me. Probably thought everyone had gone home. Once the coast was clear, I moved in the opposite direction, away from the offices, toward the auditorium. I didn't need permission to walk through that door. I needed something else. I pushed the door open just enough to slip through. The auditorium was still, a kind of hush that only happens after the clapping stops, after the balloons lose their bounce, and the last round of applause turns into echoes. The scent of hairspray, stage lights, and something sugary from leftover mints in the chairs hung in the air. Streamers dangled half-detached from the ceiling. Someone's program was crumpled in the third row. I stepped onto the carpeted aisle, my sneakers making almost no sound. I could still see the faint outline of where the podium had stood earlier, center stage under the lights. I stood there for a moment, eyes adjusting to the dim. A week ago, that podium was supposed to be mine. I'd been shortlisted to give the senior speech. I didn't tell anyone, not even Enid. I wanted it to be a quiet surprise, something mine for once. Then my counselor called me into her office. She'd smiled the way people do when they're about to soften a blow. "Bryony," she said, "I know you were one of the top candidates for student speaker, but your mother reached out. She mentioned there might be a family conflict that day and suggested it might be better to avoid any awkwardness." She tilted her head like she was waiting for me to nod. And I did. I nodded, even smiled. That mechanical kind of smile that gets you through 1,000 small cuts without bleeding out. The awkwardness wasn't mine. That was what I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I never did. Not then. The stage creaked slightly as I stepped onto it now. No one around. No lights. No pressure to impress. Just me. I took my place behind the ghost of the podium, squared my shoulders, and stared into the empty rows. The seats where my family never sat, the aisle where I never walked, the mic I never touched. Then I whispered, "We are not just shaped by who claps for us, but by who stays when no one is watching." I had written those words at 2 a.m., when I couldn't sleep, right after fixing the final edit of the senior video. I had imagined saying them with a spotlight on me, proud, composed, maybe even a little shaky with emotion. Now there was no spotlight, no microphone, just the sound of my own voice meeting silence and bouncing gently back. I didn't need the spotlight. I only ever wanted the right to stand in its path. I stepped off the stage slowly, walking past rows of seats where other kids had hugged their parents, posed for photos, laughed, and cried. All I had left was memory and silence, but silence has a shape, and tonight it wrapped around me like armor. I headed out into the main hallway. I figured I'd take one last walk through the school before I left for good. The sun had dropped lower, leaving only amber streaks through the high windows. Near the trophy cases, the student spotlight board was still up, a collage of names and faces pinned beneath plastic sleeves, seniors who'd made achievements worth noting. I paused when I saw mine, Bryony Fields. But the photo beside it wasn't mine. It was Seraphine's senior portrait, hair perfectly curled, pearly smile, the same outfit she wore in that restaurant photo earlier. The caption read, "Leadership Through Creativity, Senior Video Project." The breath in my chest stalled. Not anger, not even shock anymore, just that tired recognition of what I should have expected. I had taken the photo that was supposed to go there myself, in the tech lab, with a timer, after everyone had left. Uploaded it like I was told, filled out the form, confirmed the spelling. And here she was again, grinning next to my name, like she'd lived my year, worn my hours, spoken my lines. I reached for the corner of the paper. But I didn't rip it. I just stood there, hand resting against the plastic, tracing the edge of my name, letting the wrongness of it settle inside me without flinching. They could steal credit. They could swap photos. They could rearrange speeches, rewrite stories, and redraw the past to make it prettier. But they couldn't delete what I knew, what I had done. And that was starting to be enough. I wasn't silent because I didn't notice. I was silent because they wouldn't listen. I let my hand drop from the display board and walked the hallway in silence. My footsteps were steady now, not soft with hesitation like earlier. There was nothing left to study, nothing left to analyze or second guess. They'd made their choices, and finally, I was making mine. Outside, the breeze had shifted, cooler now. The sky had started to fade into evening. I headed toward my car, parked where I'd left it behind the gym. Just as I reached the lot, I spotted something on my windshield. A small white package sat under the wiper, the corners slightly curled from the heat. I stopped. Something about it felt too deliberate, placed just so, as if meant to look casual. I pulled it free and climbed into the car before opening it. Inside was a square gift box, pale silver with a flimsy ribbon barely holding on. Tucked beneath was a card labeled in loopy handwriting, "To Bryony, from all of us." Except when I turned the card over, the truth stared back at me. Someone had written over a different name. You could still see it, faint beneath the whiteout. Seraphine. They'd scratched out her name and written mine in by hand. The ink still looked fresh. I opened the box. A simple necklace lay inside, nestled in a foam cutout. One of those mass-produced designs that looks meaningful until you see it in every department store window. I blinked, recognizing it. Seraphine had posted a photo wearing the exact same piece last week, posing with some inspirational caption like, "Stay grounded, reach high." All of this, the card, the gift, the sloppy attempt to repackage something secondhand, was meant to look thoughtful. Like they'd remembered me, like they cared. But even in this, I wasn't worth a new gesture, just a recycled one. I sat there, the box open in my lap, heart perfectly still. Then I flipped the card over and wrote one sentence on the back. "Thank you for making it so easy to see what I needed to walk away from." No flourish, no punctuation, just the truth. I slid the card back into its envelope, sealed it, and stepped out of the car. The air had a soft bite now, and the lot was empty. I walked to the main doors of the school, still locked from earlier, and bent down, slipping the envelope under the edge of the admin office's mail slot. It didn't matter who found it. Someone would. And maybe, just maybe, they'd think twice next time before calling what they'd done a misunderstanding. Back at my car, I didn't bother reopening the box. I placed it on the passenger seat and started the engine. The dashboard clock blinked 7:38 p.m. I didn't hesitate. I opened my rideshare app, selected a destination that wasn't home, and scheduled a pickup. As I waited, I reached behind the seat and grabbed the small duffel I'd packed the night before. A few changes of clothes, my laptop, the folder with my college acceptance letters, and one photo of me and Aunt Enid at the science fair sophomore year, the only picture where I looked seen. I texted her. "You were right. I'm not invisible. I'm just not for them." Her reply came back a minute later. "You never were. I'll leave the porch light on." The car arrived. I threw my bag in the back, got in the passenger side, and buckled in. "Where to?" the driver asked, polite and casual. I paused, glancing at the gift box one more time. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. Then, at the next red light, I rolled down the window and tossed it into the trash bin on the corner. Not dramatic, just done. The driver looked over. "Everything okay?" I met his eyes in the rearview mirror. "Take me to Donovan's, please." We turned the corner just past Main Street, the lights from Donovan's bistro casting a soft amber glow on the sidewalk. I'd been here before, back when I was 12, and tagged along with Aunt Enid to pick up a takeout order. It looked exactly the same, warm, busy, buzzing with life I'd never felt entitled to be part of. The car stopped. I reached for the handle, paused, then looked in the side mirror. My reflection stared back, tired but certain. No mascara smudge, no dramatic tears, just me. I got out. Inside, the atmosphere was different than I expected. Not loud, not performative, just real. Real people leaning over half-eaten meals, clinking forks against ceramic, murmuring about things that mattered only to them. For a moment, I wondered if I'd made a mistake. Then I saw him, Mr. Kincaid. He was already on his feet, like he'd been waiting. "You made it," he said. And for the first time that day, those 3 words didn't feel like a guilt trip or a dig. They felt like recognition. I followed him through the tables. Miss Reeves gave me a small wave from across the room. Coach Phillips nodded once and raised his water glass. None of it was loud. None of it was for show. But it hit me harder than any standing ovation could have. We sat at a small booth near the window. I ordered a lemonade just to have something in front of me. Mr. Kincaid didn't press, didn't ask what had brought me here. Maybe he already knew. That's when someone's phone lit up on the table beside us. A woman glanced at it, tilted the screen my way, then winced. "Sorry," she muttered. But I'd already seen it. A new post. Seraphine again, of course. Holding a plaque at a sleek restaurant I recognized immediately. The Garrison. Caption: "Our girl made it again. Honored to celebrate this milestone with the best family." I zoomed in. Mom, stepdad, cousins, even Aunt Diane. Laughing, toasting, all seats filled. No space left, even by accident. Not tagged, not mentioned, not missed. I slid the phone back across the table without a word. Mr. Kincaid cleared his throat gently. "There's something else," he said, leaning forward. "Something I wanted to tell you earlier, but..." I wasn't sure it was my place. I nodded, slow. Say it. That community scholarship your sister received, the one she posted about last month, it was originally awarded to you. I blinked. What? We submitted both your names. The committee selected yours, but your mother called and said you'd chosen to step aside, in favor of Seraphine. Every word landed heavy but sharp, like ice dropped in a glass of warm water. I never declined anything, I said quietly. I believe you, he replied. I didn't at first, I should have asked. I'm sorry I didn't. I looked down at my drink, the condensation making rings on the napkin below. It was always hers before it ever reached me, I said, not bitter, just honest. But something shifted. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't plan to call and scream. I didn't even need to walk out. I stayed. I picked up my glass and took a sip. Dessert came, a slice of peach pie, warm and imperfect. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, and took one photo. I didn't post it, I didn't caption it. I just saved it to a folder I'd quietly titled, Proof I Existed. Mr. Kincaid stood up, dropping a few bills on the table. There's one more thing in my car, he said, grabbing his jacket. If you'll wait here. I nodded, not asking what it was, just knowing I wouldn't leave before he came back. Mr. Kincaid returned through the side door, his steps unhurried, a faint grin on his face, like he knew this would mean something. He slid into the booth and placed an envelope on the table between us. It wasn't fancy, just standard letter paper inside a plain manila fold, slightly creased at the edges. But something about the way he set it down made the room go quiet in my ears. I didn't reach for it right away. I just looked at him. You don't have to open it here, he said softly, but I hope you will. So I did. The printed letter came first. Crisp, formal, official. Stanford University Office of Admissions. The header alone made my throat tighten. A few lines in, and I realized what I was reading. Full admission, academic recognition, a scholarship package attached. No strings, no rewrites. Beneath it a card, handwritten. 30 signatures, teachers, coaches, librarians. Even Mrs. Matlin, who once docked me half a grade for a late essay and never cracked a smile in class. Their notes ran along the margins in different pens. Always saw your work ethic. Proud of how you held yourself. You never let their silence change who you were. It was like holding a mirror up to a version of myself I'd been told didn't exist. I blinked once, inhaled through my nose, and let the moment settle. Just hours earlier, I'd been sitting in my car, parked by the gym, chewing stale fries and picking at soda labels, wondering if I was invisible. And then there was that knock. I hadn't replayed it much, hadn't let myself, but now it looped again. Not the sound, but the look. Mr. Kincaid, standing at my window, not asking what was wrong or if I needed help. He hadn't offered hollow comfort or a tired, "You okay?" He just stood there, quiet, steady, present. And I realized it hadn't been pity, it had been recognition. They didn't all miss me, some had always seen. The applause from the table didn't break the spell. It was soft, respectful. Nobody was making a scene. I didn't bow, didn't tear up, didn't start thanking anyone. I just nodded. One short motion. That was enough. Then Coach Phillips, always the joker, handed me a blue ink pen. In case you need to sign anything else tonight, he smirked. Instead, I used it to sign a thank you card, one that Miss Reeves had slid over without a word. It wasn't addressed to my family or to Seraphine or to the school administration, just to this table of people who hadn't needed spotlights to see me. Dessert was offered. I declined. It wasn't hunger I was after tonight. It was clarity. When the evening wrapped, someone offered me a ride. I smiled and said I needed the air. I stepped out into the night and felt something lift from my chest. Not like a balloon. More like armor finally unstrapped. Weight I'd carried so long I forgot it wasn't part of me. The breeze caught my jacket. My shoes crunched softly over the lot's gravel edges. I didn't rush. I walked toward the far corner, the one where the streetlights buzzed a little louder, where the shadows stretched long but didn't feel threatening. That's when I saw the car pulling up. It wasn't flashy, but it was familiar. A dusty blue Honda. A woman stepped out, Enid. She looked smaller outside of her usual setting. No clipboard, no stern expression. just her and a small paper gift bag, folded neatly at the top. "I didn't want to make it about me," she said, her voice steady, "but I couldn't let you end tonight without this." Enid didn't say anything right away. She held the bag between both hands like it carried something fragile. Maybe it did. The breeze picked up and ruffled the top of her blouse, but she stood still, like the moment had been waiting for her as much as I had. She handed it to me. "Open it when you're ready. No pressure." Inside the small bag was a velvet pouch and an envelope. I opened the pouch first. A necklace, silver, with a tiny star-shaped pendant. It looked almost exactly like the one I used to admire when I was a kid, back when Enid would take me window shopping while my mom handled important errands with Seraphine. "I remember this," I said, surprised by my own voice, soft but steady. She nodded. "It was always meant for you. I just didn't know when the right time would be." The envelope carried more weight, literally and emotionally. I peeled it open carefully. Inside, folded neatly, was a letter in Enid's handwriting. "You never needed fixing, Bryony. You just needed space to grow in the shape you already were, and space was the one thing they never gave you. But I saw it. We all did, in our quiet ways. You shine differently, and that's what scared them." I stood there holding it for a long minute, not tearing up, just absorbing. "I know this doesn't fix everything," Enid added, almost hesitant. "It doesn't have to," I said. "Some things aren't broken. They're just done." She smiled like she understood, and maybe she did. We hugged, brief, sincere, enough. After she left, I stayed a little longer in the parking lot. The air was cooler now, the street quieter. It felt like everything had settled without needing to be said out loud. 3 days later, I was back in my apartment. The framed diploma rested against the wall, not because I forgot to hang it, but because I wanted to do it myself. The Stanford acceptance letter had a magnet of its own now, holding it up on the fridge door. Every time I opened it for milk or mustard, it reminded me of something not even my family could erase. My phone was quieter than it used to be. No pings, no fake cheer in the family group chat. I unfollowed Seraphine. I deleted the thread. Not in a rage, just maintenance. Some people clean out their closet. I was cleaning out expectations. By the next week, I was standing in front of 12 girls at a local youth center. Some were younger, some my age, all sharp, all underestimated. We were learning Python that day. Not the snake, the language. But more than syntax, we were learning how to debug ourselves. How to run our lives even when other people wrote bad scripts for us. I wasn't there to tell them, it gets better. I was there to tell them, you get stronger. A notification popped up later that evening, a new post from Seraphine. My sister and I, just a little misunderstanding. Family is forever. I didn't reply. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't even roll my eyes. I just smiled. Because not all families are forever, but strength can be. 2 months passed. I walked back into Donovan's bistro, not as the quiet girl hiding behind a table, but as a guest speaker for the school's new mentorship program. Miss Reeves waved from across the room. Coach Phillips gave a small 2-finger salute. Mr. Kincaid pulled out a chair in the front row. When it was my turn, I stepped to the mic, heart calm, hands loose. I wore the necklace Enid gave me, not to dazzle, to ground. I looked out at the sea of students, parents, teachers, and I said one sentence. You don't have to wait for someone to say you matter. You can just decide you do. They applauded. But it wasn't the sound that filled me. It was the space I'd finally taken up, unapologetically. I walked off the stage lighter than I'd ever been, and as I stepped into the hallway, I whispered the truth I had waited so long to believe. I didn't forgive them to let them back in. I forgave them so I could walk out whole. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something from the heart. Just a quiet reflection from someone who's lived through silence and found her voice on the other side. If this story meant anything at all, it's this. You don't need their applause to be worthy. You don't need to be seen to exist. You already do. Sometimes the people who should have had our backs are the first to disappear. Sometimes family forgets who we are because they never took the time to know us. But that doesn't make you any less real, or worthy, or powerful. What I've learned, what I hope you'll carry with you, is that healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. It can look like peace, like walking away, like building a life that no one else gets to rewrite. Forgiveness isn't always about letting others back in. Sometimes it's about setting yourself free. And now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Like your story was edited out before it even had a chance to be told? What would it take for you to reclaim that space? To step forward and be seen, not just by them, but by yourself? If this story touched you, even in a small way, drop a 1 in the comments. Or tell me, where are you watching from? And if it didn't speak to you, that's okay too. I'd love to hear why, and what kind of stories you'd like to see instead. Let's start a real conversation, because your voice matters here. If you found meaning in this video, please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story. Every week, we share deeply human, emotional journeys that reflect the real lives of people just like you, because your story deserves to be heard too.